These are the materials needed for today's tutorial. That's our scissors, our tailor's chalk, the pins, office pin, then the French curve, our tailor, and of course our white garment fabric. So in today's tutorial, I'll be starting with the down part, which is the pleated part. So please guys, sit down and watch this video to the end. You will learn a lot from it. So now I deducted the half length from the full length. So after deducting the half length from the full length, it gave me 38 inches. That's the half length is from the shoulder to your waist. So the waist downward is what I'm cutting out now. Then I added 4.5 inches to it. That's our sewing allowance. The 4.5 inches is you will be using 4 inches for the down part to make a band at the down of the sutana, then ½ inch to hold it at the upper part. That's the sewing allowance. So I folded it into 4 places like this, just as you are seeing on your screen right now. So now the wideness, I'm making it 18 inches. The person's waist is 34 inches. So I needed to make the wideness 18 inches. That's what I actually do. I use it as 2 yards. That's 18 into 4 places. That's 2 yards off for the wideness. So now, remember I deducted the half length from the full length and it gave me 38 inches. So that's what I'm chalking out now. Then the 4.5 inches that I added to it. So I'm chalking that out. So that's where I'll be cutting it from. So I'll be needing my French curve to get a straight line. Okay, so let me explain the 4.5 inches. The 4.5 inches is for the band at the down of the sutana. You know that we use it has band at the down. Then the ½ inch is for the upper part, while the 4 inches is for the band. It might not be as wide as 4 inches. It might be 3 inches, 3.5, depending on what you want. So you have to do is cut it out like this. Even the wideness, it might be more than 2 yards. It might not be up to 2 yards. It depends on how far the person is. But as I said earlier, it's 34 inches for this person. That's the waist. So you see what I did there? I had to notch it. Please, it's very important to notch your clothes. Notching the middle of your clothes. If you fold it into 4 places, notch it out, please. So I separated it there. And that's it for the pleated part. So what I'm cutting next is the half length. That's the shoulder to the waist. So the person's shoulder to the waist is 17 inches. I made it 18 inches. So I'll be folding it like this. The 18 inches is plus 1 inch sewing allowance at the down part. So it's supposed to be like ½ inch, but I prefer doing it 1 inch. Because at the end of the day, it ends up like shorter. So I just prefer that 1 inch actually. So I'll fold it into 4 places again like this, just like I folded the pleated part. So our bust measurement is what I'll use to get the wideness of the sutana. So I added 2 inches to our bust measurement, or 2.5 inches, just to get the wideness of the bust. So that's how I got the wideness. So in case in your own situation is the waist that is bigger than the bust, some people are like that, please use the waist as the wideness of the cloth. So now I'm getting the length. So like I said earlier, the length is 17 inches. I added 1 inch to it, which gave me 18 inches. So I'm chalking it out. So now the next thing I'll be doing is the shoulder. So our shoulder is 8.5 inches. Then I added ½ inch as the sewing allowance. 8.5 inches, that's divided into 2. So now I had to straighten the 9 inches down. Then I made a armhole, that's the length of the armhole, 9.5 inches. So now I'm going to curve it at that part. Just use your French curve, or you can use your free hand if you are expert at it already. It's just normal basic cutting, you know. So what I did next was I measured it round. That's the armhole. and it gave me 12 inches. So I got the middle, which is 6 inches. So that's 6 inches. I'm going to take it in by ½ inch. Why I do that is because most of my clients have complained in the past, like the armpit side, they always complain that it's bulgy, that they don't like how bulgy is it. So I just had to like conclude on, okay, let me just remove ½ inch from that part, so both front and back. So that's how I got that place. So the quarter length is 13 inches. That's from the shoulder to the under bust. That's 13 inches. So no extra sewing allowance. You know, we did not slit it at the shoulder. So from that 13 inches, the way I get my bust point is I minus 3 inches upward. So that's how I get my bust point normally for most of the measurements. So now I'm getting the bust. I'm measuring the bust. So our bust is 37 inches, which gave me 9 1/4. So I added 2 inches to that 9 1/4. So that's for the sewing allowance. While the under bust is 32 inches. So that's 8 inches. I'm sorry, it might not be that obvious. So that's 8 inches that I measured there. So I added 2 inches to it. So that's the sewing allowance. So the waist is 34 inches. So divided by 4 gave me 8½ inches, which I chalked out. Then I added 2 inches to that one too. So whatever you're getting, the bust, after measuring the round bust, you have to divide it into 4 places, because I folded it into 4 places. So plus 2 inches. So you can use your French curve to do that, or you can use your freehand. What I used was my freehand, but I'll show you how you use your French curve. Just curve it in case of beginners. So what I did next is I used my scissors to like trace out the edges, so that when I'm sewing I would know where the middle of the cloth is, because we don't normally have like so no light to like iron it out, and I needed to do this tutorial. That's the trick I use normally when I'm sewing. So now the neck parts, which is 3 inches for the wideness, while the length is 4½ inches. Because her neck is 5 inches, that was what I measured on her. So that's why I did 4½ inches. You know, we are not adding any ½ inch sewing allowance. And by the time I sew it, it's going to be that 5 inches, exactly that 5 inches. So that's why I made it 4½ inches. Meanwhile, children's own are different. Don't worry, with time we'll go into children's, how to cut children's neck, because I observed that some people make mistakes, like they make it wider than it is. So we'll go into that tutorial, but for now let's focus on this. So I used my French curve to curve it so that I'll get a perfect circle. So please, I would advise you do that. Use your French curve. Then the dart, I made the dart 4 inches because her breast to breast point is 4 inches. So I used my French curve to get a straight line there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to trace out the dart in 4 places. So that's what I'm going to do. So that's just the trick I use when getting the dart. Just make sure the glue doesn't shift. So I just traced it all out. So be careful while you are doing this. So that's how I get my dart. Just trace it out. Then you cut it out. And that's it for the upper part. So this is the round sleeve. That's the band for the sleeve. So which I made 9 inches. Then I added 2 inches to it to make it 11 inches. So I normally add like 1 inch extra in case when I'm folding it reduces. So that was what I did here. So I made it 12 inches here instead of 11 inches. So now I'll be chalking out the 11 inches. So that's the 9 inches for the sleeve. So that's 2 inches that I added as sewing allowance for the band sleeve. So I just added like ½ inch to it just in case all those half inch too, they are very important. You can just add to your sewing allowance. So that's 4 inches that I made. Sorry, it's not obvious. So that's 4 inches that I made as the band, the wideness of the band. So that's 3.5 for the wideness, while the half inches for the sewing allowance. So that band, I'm going to separate it into 2, which I did. Sorry, I didn't show it in this video. So this is the sleeve. So our sleeve is 20.5 inches, 20.5 inches. So I removed 1.5 and made it 19 inches. The reason I removed that 1.5 is because of that 4 inches band. You know, with years of experience, I realized that okay, all I have to remove is just 1.5 from the normal sleeve. By the time you deduct the half inch that I used to sew at the upper sleeve and the half inch that I used to sew at the down sleeve, the half inch that you remove from the band, you know, I just concluded that let me deduct 1.5 from the actual sleeve, which is 20.5. So I made it 19 inches, which is what I'm doing here now. That is 19 inches that I just chalked out. So, you know, I use my French curve as usual to get a straight line. So now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to measure the sleeve. I'm going to cut out the sleeve. So I measured 4 inches in that part. Then this part I measured 3 inches. 3 inches. So all you have to do is just curve it to that 3 inches. So that's it. That's it for the upper part of the sleeve. That's how I got my sleeve. So you can use your French curve in case you don't understand it clearly. So this part I added, you know, I made the band 9 inches. That's the round sleeve, 9 inches, which is 4.5 divided into 2. So this sleeve now you are going to be dividing into 2, not into 4 places. See what I did here? I used the French curve so that you understand better. In case you don't want to use your free hand, you can easily use your French curve too. So that down part that I just measured 7 inches now, let me explain that down part better. So what I did was I divided the person's round sleeve, which is 9 inches, which gave me 4.5 inches, and I added 2.5 inches to it, so it gave me that 7 inches that I just measured. So this part, you are going to curve it with your French curve. It's not going to be straight, it's going to be curved like this. So meanwhile, I made the wideness of the sleeve 11 inches. I think I should have explained that from the beginning of the sleeve. So the wideness of the sleeve is 11 inches. So from the arm, when I measure the person's arm, you need to measure the arm too. That's the upper part of the hand. It gave me 15 inches. So I divided it into two, which gave me 7.5 inches, like what I'm doing right now. So I added 2 inches to it, which gave me 9.5 inches. You see that is exactly on the same line. You see that is exactly on the same line. So that's how you have to do it. You need to measure the person's round arm, and it needs to be free. So maybe I'll be doing a video of how to measure so that you understand better too. I need to do a video because even the round sleeve too, you need to measure it in a way that the taper would come out from the wrist. So that's how you get that your round sleeve. So that was how I got the 9 inches. So I'll do a video on how to measure. Once I do it, I'll put it in the description box. So that's it. Please always notch your work. Give it a nice notch. And then I'm separating the 2 sleeves from each other. And that's it for the sleeve. Just as simple as ABC. So this is what you are going to get after separating it. So now we are going to the cap. So the person's cap is 21 inches for the wideness. So I'm cutting double cap right now. So I'm cutting 2 caps at a time. If you want to cut one, just do it 10.5. It might be wider than that, so depending on what the person's wants, it might not be up to that. But in this tutorial, I'm doing 10.5 inches as the wideness, which is 21 times 2. So now I'm folding it like this. This is into 4 places. I'm cutting 2 at a time. Then I'll now be folding it again into 8 places. So I just want to make sure the measurement is correct before I fold it into the 8th place. So it's like folding a flare. It's just like folding a flare. So now I'll be measuring the 10.5 inches. So I need to use my office pin to just put it in place. So I'll measure the 10.5 inches all round and then cut it out. And that's it for the cap. Very, very easy to cut. It's no big deal. So this is what you get after cutting it out. A round circle, a big round circle. So this is the facing for the neck. The facing. So remember, I did the length of the neck 4.5 inches and the wideness 3 inches. So I'll be doing now is adding 4 inches to the measurement, 4 inches, because I'm using the wideness of the facing as 4 inches. So that means the wideness of this facing will be 7 inches, while the length will be 4.5 plus 4 inches. That's 8.5 inches. So that's what I did here. So you can just add extra half to it, just in case. So I just traced it out and then chalked out the 4 inches round. 4 inches round. You might make yours wider, it depends, but I use 4 inches for most of my measurements. So all I need to do is to pin it down so that it doesn't shift, then cut it out. Please, if you have light, iron it out. It's very important to do so. Please iron it out. And that's it for the facing. So you can pin it together with the cloth. So the next thing now I'm cutting is the pocket. So the wideness of the pocket, the length of the pocket is 15 inches and the wideness is 9 inches. I love my pockets very long, deep, so that anything you put, if you even put ragolis of water inside, it will stay inside. So the next thing I'm cutting now is the band of the cap. So this band, I'm making the wideness 13 inches. The reason I made it 13 inches is because the person's head is 11 inches. So that 11 inches, I now added 2 inches to it. So that's 13 inches. So the wideness of the person's head is 22 inches, which I divided into 2 now. I folded this cloth into 2, which gave me 11 inches. So that's why I added 2 inches to it, which gave me that 13 inches. So now I'll make the length of the band 3 inches. So if you are cutting yours, it might not be up to that, it might be more than that, but I prefer using 3 inches so that by the time I sew it in, it will give me that 2.5 inches. So you see what I'm doing there? The scissors is refusing to pin it down, so I had to just use my office pin to pin it down. So this is 13 inches. That's what I chalked earlier. So I need to do is cut it out, and that is it. You are going to enjoy the sewing tutorial, so please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much.